Welcome back in, everybody, to Bird 365, the first official Johnny Mac Real Football Friday of the 2024 season. Eagles were back at training camp this week, reported on Monday. We're out there, or was it Tuesday they reported? They reported on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. They were out there with the media out there. So Johnny Mac was down at NovaCare, watching it all, taking it all in, and then walk through today and then back out for practice tomorrow. So our first official 2024 Football Friday. Good stuff. As we've been covering it all week long. We appreciate all the viewership, likes, comments, shares, subscribes, super chats, memberships. We appreciate it all. So thank you guys for making the channel grow. We appreciate that very much. John, two players I want to talk to you about here before we get Ed Kratz up in hour number 2 here in about 19 minutes. Let's start with the guy on defense, Devin White. Thought Devin White had some pretty good comments yesterday at his press conference. But more importantly, on field, how has Devin White looked? I know he's really been the one consistent guy in terms of getting those first team reps, no matter who's next to him, whether it's a Bond or Nakobe Dean or Van Sumeren. But what have you seen from Devin White so far in practice?
Yeah, I mean, he's been the guy. And, the question is, I talk about those two positions where there's competition and big, was very honest, as Damo said, and he didn't try to hide it. And he said corner and linebacker, but at corner, I think it's just trying to find out which is your best option out of a bunch of pretty good options. At linebacker, I think it's trying to figure out guys who can play and guys who can help you win. And Devin's been the one guy that he's defaulted to through all that churn. Hasn't taken every first team rep, but probably over 90%. And he's lost some weight from the spring. He's gotten in better shape. So all positive, from that standpoint. He's been tremendous carrying Saquon Barkley on wheel routes in the coverage aspect. Now, you never know if that's, is Saquon a decoy on the play and he's just sort of trying to carry him downfield to get him out of the play. There can be a lot of context to that, but he's always in his hip pocket, it seems. So that's been a positive. He's a guy you got to keep an eye on when the pads come on, from the perspective, not the physical aspect of it. Typically, when we talk about pads at linebacker, defensive line, running back, we're talking about the physicality. Like, you got to find out if Tyler Steen is physical enough to play right guard in the NFL. You don't have to worry about the physical aspect with Devin White, but you have to figure out he hasn't been good in run support. So if you're going to be the middle linebacker in this defense, where they're playing gap and a half and they're going to play light boxes and they're going to play everybody else in coverage and try to get that +1 in coverage, you gotta be gap sound. And that hasn't been a strength. So that's my biggest concern with Devin White. But yeah, it looks like he's going to be the guy. And then it's a matter of who's going to be next to him. And still open-ended. I think Nakobe's still the favorite. But other guys are getting looks, even Ben Van Sumeren, even Jeremiah Trotter Jr. So everybody's getting looks. And Oren Burks is hurt right now. He's got a knee injury. He'd probably be getting opportunities as well if he were healthy. So they're looking at everybody at linebacker, everybody they have.
Yeah, and it certainly seems like Devin White does possess that athletic ability. I mean, if you're running with Saquon Barkley on the outside, you're obviously a pretty damn good athlete. So let's hope Devin White can have a good year this year. What'd you make of his press conference comments, John? A lot was talked about, the group chat he has and maybe taking on a leadership role.
Everybody loves that stuff.
Well, I don't care about the group chat, but it did kind of seem like he was talking like a leader up there, and maybe he's trying to take on that role. Maybe he's trying to turn the page and be a more mature player in the NFL. I know this is kind of a one-year prove-it deal for him, so it seems like he's kind of trying to check all the boxes and be that guy on the defense. Do you see that type of leadership role emerging for him this year?
Well, by nature, if you're going to be the middle linebacker, there's got to be some
Right.
leadership aspect to it. You got to take control and get guys lined up and get the calls and all that kind of stuff. So, you're the quarterback of the defense. So
Right.
there's certainly a leadership aspect to it. And yeah, I mean, he's got some cachet because of his pedigree, and that's why I can get on the text chain with Jalen and AJ. Um, you know, he's got some cachet with the players and his peers because of his athleticism and his freakish athletic ability. And that
Yeah,
goes
I'll
a
still
long
default
way.
back to what Fangio said, though, when talking about leadership. The best way to be a leader is to play up to your abilities.
Yeah,
And
nobody's going to listen to you if you can't play. That's what
exactly. And that's
another.
where, if Devin White plays this year, I think he's going to instantly become a leader on that defense. But if he doesn't obviously live up to it, then, it's a whole new story.
Yeah, then all of a sudden the texts aren't getting answered.
Yeah,
But
exactly. It's a
no,
group
I'm
chat
joking.
with one
I'm
guy.
joking. Well, two guys, but they're two pretty big guys.
No, I'm saying if he doesn't play, they're not going to be
Oh
answering.
yeah.
Devin will be talking to himself.
Yeah. So and it doesn't look like there's a lot of optimism. There's always a lot of optimism, but if you're being honest, it's not a great position on paper. And that's not changing because they're not going to bring in people that are going to make a difference that much. If you think about last year with Zach Cunningham and Miles Jack, who was here for a cup of coffee. You got to
Literally.
bring in people at this stage. It's not going to be difference makers later in the season with Shaq Leonard, who people were excited about. Shaq didn't have much left. He was a great player, but this league moves quick. Shaq Leonard's a perfect example. Shaq Leonard at in his prime, was one of the 2 or 3 best linebackers in the NFL.
Yes, he was. He was dominant.
Yeah. And it's not a stasis. I say it all the time, and it moves very, very quickly. So I call it pedigree scouting. I think the Eagles did a little bit too much of it, really, the past 2 years. It didn't work out last year. We'll see if it works out a little bit better this year.
Yeah, seems to be good signs, though, so far. Obviously, can't take too much of it. No pads on yet or anything, but Devin White, certainly the number one guy in that linebacker room right now. We will see how it plays out for him. John, the other guy I want to talk about with you is on the offensive side of the ball, and that's Saquon Barkley. These are two guys we talked about extensively this offseason. A lot of fans have their sights set on both of these players to have a big year for the Eagles this year. What have you seen so far from Saquon Barkley? I know it's probably been limited, but does he look like the explosive player that Howie Roseman had mentioned, the game-changing type of player? What have you seen so far from Saquon?
Well, the fans love him. They love him.
Howie does too. It wasn't just the fans. Howie said what he said, and
no, well, the Eagles love him too.
they love him.
They
Love him.
Howie's the one who called him special and a weapon and created these massive expectations. So if it doesn't come to fruition, people will probably blame me, but they should blame Howie for these massive expectations. I haven't necessarily seen the explosion as much as the impact, as I said. I've seen the explosion from Jalen Hurts. Like Jalen Hurts looks healthy.
Yeah, that's good news.
Looks like he was 2 years ago with that +1 aspect of the running game. A lot of juice, which we didn't see last year. He had back-to-back off seasons where he had ankle surgeries. Maybe that was weighing on him a little bit more. And then as he got into the season, he hurt his knee, and then it really became obvious that he was laboring a little bit.
Right.
And you have to be concerned. Dama was talking about the hits he takes and playing the position like a fullback. And, so there's some attrition during the season. There has been for Jalen. but right now he looks back to being his explosive self. And if teams are concerned about Saquon, and they were, again, this is one play in training camp, and when they fake the flip to him, and all of a sudden it opens up all this space for Jalen Hurts, and he exploded through it. But he can run. I mean, there's no doubt that Saquon's a great athlete. Is he the athlete he once was? No, but he's still got plenty left in the tank from the athleticism standpoint. It's funny if you talk about the two backs that are here. I think Miles is more of a home run hitter at this stage, or not at this stage for Miles, than Saquon at this stage. In other words, when Miles was here, I think he was more of a home run hitter than Saquon is now.
Got it.
Not when Saquon was in 2018. And DeAndre, I think DeAndre was a little bit overrated by Eagles fans when he was here. I think he was more, playing behind a great offensive line. If you think about where he broke out in that week 2 game against Brian Flores, they were like, all right, let DeAndre Swift beat us. And to his credit, he did. They're playing 6-man box. They're not even trying to stop it. And they got scorched. But as you see, and then the next week he had a big game in Tampa Bay, I believe it was. And then the rest of the year, it was like, all right, well, we got to pay some attention to him. And it became more pedestrian, the running attack. And part of that was Jalen not being as healthy as well. So I think it's going to be much better than it was last year with Saquon in the running game. And then the passing game part of it, just to be determined. I'll believe it when I see it. Is where I am with that. From the standpoint of, they're not, it's not going to be, it's not going to be a meaningful targeted player when you have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert. I mean, that would be silly to me. And then for the dump off stuff, as we talk about all the time, I'll believe it when I see it.
Any inclination on how they're going to use him in the offense? I mean, we talked a lot about the different ways you can use him in the passing game as a bell cow back. I know you probably haven't seen too much of that, but how are they going to use Saquon Barkley this year? Have your thoughts on that evolved at all after 2 days of camp?
No, from the standpoint of, well, they want him to be a 3-down back, so they want him to be a bell cow back. Now, I think they might start it out slowly to sort of manage it. You got to get through 17 games. So you might see more Kenny Gainwell early. And then as the season goes on, it might start being more Saquon as you get into the tougher games and must-win situations. I think, that's how they're going to do it from a pitch count. Because you do have to be cognizant, as Damo said, about how many touches he's had, the injury history. You just don't want to go out there and give him Derrick Henry level touches. I don't think that's going to end up well. So I think they're going to try to manage it a little bit, but they definitely want him to be a 3-down back when it gets really meaningful. And can they get to that stage? What is, I think, the way they're going to handle it, but I think he's going to have much more of an impact on the running game than the passing game.
Have you seen anything in the passing game though? Because that was the one thing that we did talk about, and you had, I don't want to say, we had some heated discussions about how we thought he should be used. Have you seen anything in the passing game that you liked or didn't like?
He had a good first day, and then it was more Kenny Gainwell day 2. So maybe they're working on some things.
They didn't line him up though in the slot or anything.
Well, they did more of that in the spring. There wasn't a ton like they did it. But remember, the spring's a passing camp, right? So the run game's not really involved. As Vic explained, these are the first team drills for the 2024 Eagles, real team drills when they got to training camp. The passing camp, they used them a lot, but it was mainly as a decoy. Like they would spread the field with 4 receivers, and Saquon would be in the backfield, and they would motion him out. Sorry, I would put a moratorium on motion. They motion him out as the 5th receiver, so it was an empty set. They did that multiple times, and he would just stay at the line of scrimmage and be an outlet receiver. So if something, if they're trying to get the ball to AJ and AJ's covered up, and then Jalen defaults to him, and just throws it out there and tries to get him in space, as Damo said. They did a lot of that in the spring. Haven't seen a ton of it but again, it's 2 days, and it'll be a part of it. But I think he's going to be more of a decoy than anything else when it happens to that, because the Eagles receivers are so good. The top tier guys, AJ, Devontae, Dallas, they're so good. I think he's going to be more of a decoy. Now, if one of them gets hurt, then I think he becomes more involved.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
but he better if he better, because I'll take him over Paris Campbell or John Ross. So,
even that, I mean, those guys would still be getting more traffic, but it becomes more relevant. If they got to play, they're going to get traffic. That's just the way it is. So yeah, but from the numbers, and I know everybody's interested in the numbers, and I'm the hater, but I had Barkley at about 13 rushing, 400 receiving, 1,700 total, and that's more than Xander. That's a lot,
John. Isn't that? Don't you think that's? I mean, that's pretty damn good.
Lot. It's not. It is good, and he's a good player, and I've said that from day one. But I go back to Miles in 2022, and he was at 1269. So there's no reason to think Saquon's a little bit better.
How many receiving did Miles have?
Well, Miles was a brutal receiver.
But just for reference.
Not many. I don't have it. I can look. It's like 100 and something, because they didn't even go to him. He really was bad that season as a receiver. He had been better in the past. But if you look at last year with DeAndre and Kenny, they were well over, even though people think they never threw it to the running back, and they didn't. And DeAndre was, not happy with that. They combined for, I'd have to look, but over 500. So to me, if he gets to 400, that's fine. That's good. And 1,700 total, that's good. And that's all you want. I'll be happy with
that. That's a difference-making player to me.
Well, that's more than Xander Krause and Bill Colarulo, the 2 Saquon Barkley truthers who think he's a superstar.
I'm not a Saquon truther. You keep putting me in that category.
I'm the hater, and I tell you the guy's going to do that. I'm just saying.
On the scale of Bill Colarulo to John McMullen, when it comes to Saquon Barkley, I am closer to John McMullen than I am to Saquon or to Bill Spadaro.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to be a good player. I just don't think he's a great player. Nor does he need to be on this team.
Yeah, but isn't 1,700 yards a great player? Like, you don't see good players doing 1,700 yards. I mean, that's a lot of offense, John.
Yeah. Well, it is in this era. You're right. There aren't a lot, and I'm really using the template of Miles, as I said, from 2022. And he's got to stay healthy. You got to play every game to get at those numbers.
Yeah, that's my biggest fear, is that he plays what?
Yeah, I mean, that's built in. I mean, obviously, if he's not healthy, he's not getting those numbers.
I think he plays 14, 15 games. I don't think he plays 17, but we'll see.
Yeah, you got to stay healthy. That's a big part of it, and that's a big if with him. No question about it. But with this supporting cast, yeah, I think he can get there. It doesn't, this support. Miles was not great. All right. Miles had 1269 and he averaged over 5 yards per carry. Is he a great player? He was never a great player, but that's what he did with a great offensive line.
Right.
And a quarterback who demands a lot of attention. So I think Saquon can do similar numbers to that if he stays healthy.
Yeah, and I think I'd be pretty damn happy with those numbers, 1,700 yards, all-purpose yards. As long as he stays healthy, I've continued to say I want him to be impactful. I don't care as much about the numbers.
And that's what I've said.
Yeah,
I mean, if people are concerned about him, even it's because of reputation or whatever, and that opens up space for AJ in the passing game and Devontae and Dallas or Jalen in the running game, instead of vice versa, that to me is far more important. Far more important.
Yeah, I think he's going to have a big impact on the team positively. So we'll see how it plays out with Saquon Barkley. First 2 days of camp are officially in the books. John McMullen was down there at NovaCare Complex. Ed Kratz was down there at NovaCare Complex. He will be joining us next on Birds 365. I see Ed in the green room waiting to join us on Birds 365. Stay tuned, everybody. Appreciate you all being here. Make sure you guys hit the like button. Stay tuned. Ed Kratz coming up next on Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.